in your environment, working safely at height must be a bit of a challenge for you because it's a fairly fast-moving environment.
Yeah, so our environment is very fast-moving. We have very strict deadlines to meet for the organisers.
Indeed.
So, yeah, it can be quite difficult to manage the health and safety and particularly working at heights.
What are the major challenges in that?
Major challenges is the migrating workforce. We have a lot of workforce that will come in as subcontractors, come from a wealth of backgrounds, and it's making sure they understand the principles of working at heights. So that's one of the biggest challenges we found.
Okay. And Rhaynukaa, if I may ask you the same question, you're obviously in a quite different environment. Yes. If you maybe give us some background to your approach to working at height and how you guys learned it, which I think is quite...
So in my role at HS2, we've taken on the role under CDM of both client and principal designer, and we do have a lot of work at height. However, our premise is to design it out, and I won't say so far as reasonably practicable, it goes beyond that. So we definitely, as client and as principal designer, will challenge back to the contractor, to our designers, if there is work at height. We haven't been able to eliminate it, but in a lot of cases we have significantly reduced it. We have used new techniques to eliminate proportions of it, or do work at height in a manner where we don't need to use towers, we use larger platforms, we don't need to use mutes, we don't need to use temporary working platforms as such. Okay.
And Barry, obviously your background is rather unusual in lighthouses and such like, and I dare say you must have come up against some pretty interesting challenges, not only in that, but in your current role.
Well, I would certainly suggest that the use of helicopters makes things a lot easier.
It sure does.
But it's not always a practical solution. In my new role with the Association for Project Safety, one of the things that does concern us is the fact that access isn't really considered as part of the design process. Mm-hmm. I was speaking at the Temporary Works Forum a month or so ago on design risk management and the benefits of the design risk management process, and the temporary works designers there said that their biggest problem is not being considered as part of the permanent works designers.
Indeed.
And it tends to be left up to the contractors. You know, the designers come up with the design, the client knows what he wants, they wait till the contractor's appointed before they start considering temporary works and scaffolding and access, all the rest of it. So that seems to be a bit of a problem across different sectors within the construction industry at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we spoke previously about, I think Don was talking about, and the challenges facing TfL particularly, and one of the underlying themes was quite often in a lot of the places that we go to, it's difficult to find people who know what good looks like. From your point of view,
yeah,
does that sound familiar?
No, I agree with you, because what we did as a business, we assumed that everybody knew what was good practice. Mm-hmm. It was only until we opened our eyes as a business and said, let's look at what we're doing. And we identified that what we thought we were communicating out, particularly about working at heights, was good, but it wasn't reaching the people that needed to know. So that's what made us change our whole culture approach.
Okay.
So we actually worked from the ground up. What we did was we sort of looked at our processes, and we did away with a lot of our processes. Okay. And we focused more on our culture. And where we've done that, we've actually seen a change, a drop in the amount of incidents related to working at heights. So we have really driven our culture forward. So that, yeah, it's been a very positive.
Is that something that rings true to you, Barry, as well? That you know, it's quite difficult to find people who know what good looks like, particularly in the nicest possible way, particularly from a management point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult we have a set membership criteria for various levels, and we've tried to apply competency to that, but some people think that because they've worked in the industry for 40 years, they're competent and they know everything. But we're starting to find there's people coming out of university and working in industry for a couple of years that are far more competent than people that have been doing the job for 40 years. So we're trying to look at how we value experience, because I was speaking to somebody the other week there, likes of PricewaterhouseCoopers are now moving away from graduates and trying to develop an internal education program for people to come in. having worked in consultants, we always used to assume that the graduates knew what they were doing, but they don't tend to understand buildability. One of the things that we're trying to do as an organisation is engage with colleges and universities. In fact, I'm down here next month speaking at Coventry University, but it's third year students. We need to get involved in teaching apprentices early on in their apprenticeships, students early on in their academic career. A lot of the stuff that we do as design risk management and CDM is taught at master's level. So there's a disjoint there somewhere. We need to try and work on that. And I think collaboration, as we were saying last night, all these other organisations working together will change the culture, as Paul says. You can't legislate for it. By changing the legislation, we won't save lives. We'll have to change the culture.
Okay. Sounds easier said than done.
Yeah, well,
Rhaynukaa, obviously, Rhaynukaa and the project that you're involved in, there are a lot of people who could be working at height, and it's obviously covering a vast area or on many different sites.
Yes.
And I know you've mentioned there that you've tried to look at it from the point of view of avoiding work at height. How easy has that been?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's been easy.
Yes.
However, we've taken the challenge, looked at it as an opportunity and developed it. So if I give you one example, and there is a case study on this which I can share afterwards, but Palmer's scaffolders, so we in London are carrying out a mass exhumation because the Euston Station will go over the site, which is currently, or used to be, a burial site. Obviously, it's quite a sensitive project. We've had to engage with the Church of England and various other stakeholders, and one of the commitments we made, which is part of the Act, is that the whole area would be encapsulated. In simple terms, we would put a tent around it, but the original idea was always, it'll be a tube and fitting tent, we'll cover it up, and there you go. And actually, by working with our Tier 1 contractors, Costain Skanska joint venture, CSJV, and Palmer Scaffolders, what they've done is developed a bespoke system. It's fully sustainable, it's modular build, it was built off site, brought on, and it was put into place using cranes pretty much, and there was no work at height involved with that. We reduced, I think we calculated between 4,000 and 5,000 person hours of manual handling. All of the work that was done, as I said, was on a massive platform, so the actual platform would have, I said, been about three times the size of this stage.
Yep.
So you're pushing the barriers out, and it was designed with, and I mentioned this to Barry last night, that actual encapsulation was designed with the idea in mind that it would be up for 18 months, 2 years. We would need to use it, we would need to maintain it. We had ventilation in it, we had lighting in there. So it was the full life cycle, and also the consideration that we would then be pulling it down. So how were we going to demolish it in equally safe a manner by not now having to put people up in mutes and cherry pickers and the same?
Sure. Okay, thank you. Who would you say is best placed to, we've been talking about a few, you guys are saying it's to do with attitude, it's to do with culture and all that. Who's best placed to challenge that attitude that there is in the workforce, particularly in relation to it?
I think from our organisation, you're looking at our site managers, our project managers.
Yep.
And again, talking about site managers and project managers, it's also giving them the tools and the knowledge to challenge that behaviour. And we've, like I say, we've spent a lot of time working with our on-site managers, our project managers, equipping them with the knowledge to be able to challenge people. And once we've done that, we've actually empowered them. And we've actually found that our workforce will challenge back and come up with solutions of how to get around the problem. Just to touch on one thing there, we as an industry cannot eliminate working at heights. So we've got to manage it the best way we can. And that's where we found if we make everybody responsible, then we can manage it more successfully.
Indeed. Okay, thank you. And Rhaynukaa, I know you guys are taking a slightly different approach to it, but it looks like you're really confronting it head on in terms of taking a lot of the challenges away. Is that a fair?
I'd agree with that, and I also agree in terms of Paul. One of the approaches that we work very closely with our Tier 1 contractors. So in the industry we call them black hats, but call them site managers, site supervisors, that sort of level. What we're very keen to do is if there is an incident or if there is an issue or we walk past and we hear them grumbling about something that's not right, there is that engagement piece of, well, okay, but have you challenged that? Why are you doing it? Oh, well, because my manager's told me to, or because we need to get it done, or because the engineers. And the whole process is we're not training the supervisors in terms of supervisors. It's building their soft skills. It's building their empowerment to help change the culture, because the more people that stand up and challenge it and come back to the office and say, we can't do this. You haven't thought about the people. You've designed this without thinking about the operatives. You haven't put a realistic timescale in place. Until that happens, it's a perpetual cycle. The more people that stand up and go, no, the more people will start listening and go, oh crap, that's not going to work. And you will always have a tier of contractor that will sadly take on any work. And if I may be so bold, those are the tiers of contractors that are probably not sat in this room now.
Indeed, yes. This is an unfortunate fact of it.
Yeah.
Barry, from your point of view, and talking with your association hat on, how do how do you get that message across to your members, or are your members giving you some feedback that they're having difficulty with?
Well, I think one of these things, it's very easy to say what we have to do.
Yes.
But if we're honest, safety costs money. And clients want a cheaper job. Subcontractors are getting forced to do jobs for cheaper prices. I think the HSE and organisations like APS have a duty to try and advise clients on how to do the jobs properly. There'll always be, as Rhaynukaa says, the big companies, and probably everybody around this room, have budgets to allocate to training and to safety. But once you move into some of the smaller contractors, that's not a priority. And these are the guys that are going to lose their lives. There was I think the HSE reported last week that a guy in Aberdeen had fallen off a scaffold that wasn't put up properly. These are the guys, it's the guys on site that are going to lose their lives. The guy in the design office can do as much as he can, but doesn't really think about how the job's getting carried out. Temporary works has to be, is in a temporary stage until it's completed, to create a platform for permanent works.
Yes.
So it's that whole design process, and we're trying to focus more on design risk management as a holistic approach rather than focus on the CDM regulations. But we just have to try and educate as many people as we can in their responsibilities. We know there's duty holders out there that try and pass on the responsibilities to somebody else. And as you say, somebody will come in and take the job on because there's money involved. So I think we need to make clients more aware of the cost of having a safe site. And that's going to be the difficult thing.
Rhaynukaa, you wanted to come in on a point?
I was going to say, it'd be remiss, so with my IOSH hat on, but also as my individual self, safety doesn't cost money. Safety really does not cost money. And I actually said this at the IOSH dinner I was at last week, and you could see the new IOSH president going. They said, yeah, how do we move the safety industry forward? How do we enhance it? How do we bring people into it, encourage people? And I said, we stop being health and safety professionals. Because we're so busy being health and safety professionals, we stopped, or we aren't business people. We don't understand the commercial elements. We don't understand program. It's not my job to understand health and safety. I know that. I've got the badge to prove it. I know the technical side of it. What I need to understand is, what are the challenges being faced by my program directors? What are the program deadlines? What are the cost implications? And how do I help them? If I think about the previous presentation, TfL, brilliant that they stopped works for 2 nights. The sheer cost of that, the amount that they could have saved by doing it right the first time. So it's that myth that we really, really need to break. Safety does not cost money. You do it right, it will save you so much money.
Okay. Thank you very much. You touched on there earlier that the contractors that we really want to reach out to probably aren't here today. And this is a challenge that we face on a regular basis, that the people we really need to speak to are not the ones who come along to this. However, we do have quite a wide and varied cross-section of delegates here today, from specifiers to users, rental companies, trainers. If you had a message to share with the audience, with those who are in a similar situation to yourself, who have to manage the work activities of others, what would it be?
I'd say that they need to be proud of the fact that they're part of PASMA, and they need to represent it. I think, and we've had it in Irish, I'm sure we have it in APS, we will always have members that don't represent it in the best light. And the examples that you gave of there were contractors, there were operatives that were building the towers wrong, that weren't doing the right thing. It's that, as you said, you've had the training, you've got the certificate, how do you move it forward? And as much as I'm not an advocate for disciplinary action and about the stick, there is an element of you represent this brand, be proud of it. Every now and then you will get operatives, you will get managers that will come into your organisation that aren't part of it or that aren't in this room. Make them realise that they actually should be. At the moment what you've got is the smaller contractors walking into certain businesses and going, oh, they've got a PASMA certificate, but actually they're not doing it too differently to me and they've just got on with it. So why do I need to spend money to be a PASMA member or an IOSH member, an APS member, whatever it might be? It's making them realise the actual benefit of it and the positive impact of it, rather than it's just a badge that you wear in a conference that you go to every year.
Thank you. Barry, you're thinking on it?
Well, we're facing issues with, trying to get people to see the benefits of our organisation, probably the same as you. I'm trying to make it it's almost at the badge of, I'm not going to say the badge of quality, but the acceptance that people are buying into the culture, so that clients who are members of APS are showing their commitment to health and safety by buying into our organisation. We now know that there's councils out there that are expecting contractors to be members of APS. So we've raised the profile that people realise that it doesn't necessarily make you good at your job, but it's showing a commitment to the culture.
Okay.
And I think there's an awful lot of organisations out there that need to buy into that as well.
Okay, thank you. And Paul, last but by no means least, you got a message to share with the audience in respect of, as I say, people who are in a similar situation to yourself, who manage to work at height?
Yeah, I think for us, my message would be that if you don't understand it, put your hand up. As an organisation, what we've done is said, right, we're not sure what we're doing here. What we need to do is reach out to you guys, who are the experts, APS, etc., and reach out and say, look, we want that help, particularly as a contractor. What happens from that is that we then have the confidence to go forward and then tackle the smaller contractors. We will refer to them as cowboys, etc., whatever you want to refer to them as. We have then got the ability to go and challenge them. So it is a collaboration. We've got to start working together. And one of the things that I do within our industry is I constantly challenge. And I'm not there to cause a rift. What I'm here to do is say, wait a minute, on my watch, no one is going to die. And I need your help, particularly as a contractor, to make sure that happens.
Thank you very much. At this stage, can I open up the panel to questions from the audience? Does anyone have any questions they would like to put to the panel? Excuse me, I can't see very well, getting blinded here. Come on, there must be some questions. There you go, Don.
Architects, interesting. We previously had discussions with architects, and they feel that there seems to be a certain sector that says the appearance is the most important thing, and everything else to that is second, in their opinion.
So essentially, you're saying the aesthetics and how nice it looks.
It's interesting you mention that, because Glasgow Caledonian University are releasing an app for doing risk assessments on site, and as part of their trial, they're testing I can't remember how many hundreds of people that they tested, but the evidence shows that architects are less likely to pick up on risks and hazards on a construction site than engineers or other trades. And that probably comes back to what you're saying. Their idea, their focus is on how the building looks, but the civil engineers or the structural engineers are the ones that are putting it together. I think the HSE would like the architects organically take on the lead designer role and the principal designer role. But again, there's an awful lot of architects out there that don't have the resources to take on that extra task. There's not fees involved in it. But if it's done early on, and in theory, as the HSE are correct, if it's done early on, they're brought in as part of the design team, it could save money over the length of the project. But like temporary works designers, principal designers and contractors are brought in, I think, in REBA stage 3 or something like that, which is way down the line. And sometimes it's somebody who's not even been involved in the design process. So I do agree that architects have a different view of how the construction site goes together and we build things. But that's one of the things that we're trying to address, is getting involved with architectural students and teaching them about design risk management principles early on in their academic career. So.
Okay, thank you. And again, Rhaynukaa, obviously, or I'm saying obviously, I mean, the approach that you guys have taken is to have that that input in respect to particularly work at height or height safety early on in the process, because you are fulfilling both roles.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Paul, what's your thinking on that? Do you come across this very much?
We're quite fortunate because, particularly with our industry, mainly sort of temporary work, so our designers are involved very early on.
Okay.
And they will look at what we're designing and actually take into account safety. So we're quite fortunate
Indeed.
in that approach.
Yeah, indeed. As Don was saying, and we've come across this as well, and I think we spoke about this last night, it seems to be that there is a particular viewpoint on the part of designers and architects especially, that it's all about how it looks. And we did keep trying to convince them that if you design it out, if you design out the working at height, that makes life a lot easier for everybody, because nobody's at risk of fall because they don't have to put up scaffolding and towers and all that kind of stuff.
Can I just say one thing as well? I think a lot of architects forget about the maintenance cycle of things.
Yes.
So they're concerned with the construction of it, and that's not a criticism of architects. The processes are concerned with the construction of the building.
Yes.
But the CDM regulations sort of focus us on the maintainability, reuse, demolition. It's thinking about the whole process.
Absolutely. Any other questions for our panel? Yes, sir.
When putting forward a contract, how do you check to see if the people have been sufficiently trained, and more importantly, how their subcontractors or sub-subcontractors have also been trained to a suitable level?
Ray, you want to cover that one? You want to start?
I'm in a slightly different position, so as a client, I wouldn't be checking that. That's my principal contractor's duty to do. I will assure the principal contractor systems and their management systems to see what they are doing to ensure that their tier 2, 3, 4, 5 contractors have got the appropriate training, skills, competency, etc. We also look at their procurement process in terms of how are they engaging the contractors for the work that's required.
Just one on that as well. We have a lot of contractors that come to ourselves because the majority of our guys are contractors. And we have a procurement process, we have a selection process, but we won't stop working with them or won't use them. What we'll do is we'll say, wait a minute guys, to work for us, what you need to do is achieve this. And we'll support them in raising their standards to achieve our goals. And that's one way of doing it as well. That's how we've really seen an improvement in our workforce, is also bringing our contractors on that journey. And it hasn't been easy, I will tell you now, it's not been easy because we've met resistance. But what they see is if they want to work with us, they've got to have these standards. And we did go through 6 months of sheer hell. But now we're seeing the fruits of our labour. So it is that keep plugging away at it and bring them standards up.
Barry, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Well, we working on the small scale of contracts, we had a procurement process that would identify subcontractors and their training and their competency of their subcontractors. But in practice, it changes all the time, because they would get guys that would be on the list for the tender. You would appoint them, and in 6 months down the line, they would no longer be working with the company. So then it's, as Rhaynukaa says, you've got to rely to some extent on the contractors themselves managing that. And in all honesty, I don't know if there's a solution. One of the things that the HSE were talking about a couple of weeks ago is their biggest problem is migrant workers in modern slavery, going onto sites and seeing sleeping bags. So somebody along the line is allowing these workers to work on site and sleep on site, but who's accountable for it?
Indeed.
So there's obviously going to be loopholes. I don't know. I don't have an answer, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I'll die on that one, I'm afraid. I mean, certainly from our point of view in PASMA, in respect of the management of working at height involving mobile access towers, we have developed a module which aims specifically at managers, and that is aimed at equipping managers to know what good looks like, because quite often what we find, and as Don related in his TfL experience, we find quite often that managers rely upon the users of the equipment to know what they're doing, and if they're not doing it properly, they would not know the difference. So the Towers for Managers is aimed specifically at those who work at using mobile access towers, so that they know what they're looking for, so that they know, even when we're talking about there, when we're talking about competencies, that they know if someone is using towers and stairs, that they are looking for that on their PASMA card, so to speak. Listen, I would like to thank you, and I would like to invite the audience to thank our panel members for sharing their perspectives with us. Thank you very much.